This demonstration is meant to showcase a product called BlueCell. BlueCell is an optimization software offered by Eurosoft, and the backbone of it is an algorithm that was developed in conjunction with the University of Technology in Vienna, or UT-Wien. The university is a teaching and research university in Vienna, and they're very well renowned for their work in advanced mathematics. Start by demonstrating the different ways that we bring parts into BlueCell. To begin with, you can definitely just start manually inputting the parts. So for example, I would say that this is job 1, 2, 3, 4. The room is my room. The name would be the left side of maybe a cabinet. The assembly would be cabinet number 1. I want my grain to be length. I only want one of these parts. And my length is going to be 600 millimeters by 300 millimeters. Now, we're working in metric today, so those are actually really, really small numbers, but I think you get the point. Now, you'll notice that I'm only seeing a top-down view, and that's because BlueCell doesn't yet recognize any materials that are available to choose from. So if you are going to put parts in manually, you're best off going to the Sheets tab and going ahead and opening up or entering and creating a Sheets group. I'm going to go ahead and open up one that I created earlier, and you can see these are the different types of materials or sheets that I have available. You will see that their quantity is set to 0 because my availability is listed as unlimited. If I jump back to the Parts tab, you can see that if I go ahead and set my material to antique white, you now see that I have face 5 and 6 views as well as all the edges available as well. Some companies have a relatively standardized product offering, and if this is the case, the second option that we have for pulling parts into BlueCell would be to open a parts group that we have created and saved previously. Doing that, I'm going to go ahead and open up that parts group, and I'm going to open one that I created quite a bit earlier. So let's say this is a list of door parts that I use for a lot of my jobs, but the only difference is the width of the stiles and rails has changed. Maybe instead of 57 millimeters, I need it to be 62. And if this is the case, I'd go ahead and type in 62. And then one feature I think you'll find nice is in this grid, as well as any grid within BlueCell, you can make really quick changes by changing one column or one cell and then pressing Control D to have all of the parts in that column follow the same change. Save it for use next time. Or any other changes that I wanted to save them. Like, let's say I wanted to change the materials of all these parts. Then I could go ahead and set that and again press Control D, but then I can come over and I can save this parts group. So if I wanted to use that in the future, I could just save and overwrite the existing parts group, or I could save it as a new one. I'm going to go ahead and remove these parts groups from the list of parts that I'm working with because I want to demonstrate the third option, which is the most common way that our customers bring parts into BlueCell. To do this, we run what's called a sequence. And a sequence is basically an import that we've configured specifically for our purposes. However, with sequences, you can run some pretty powerful functions. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to open up Configure Sequences up here and show that to you. For now, I'm going to open up the Renewity sequence. Now, this is an ASCII sequence, which means that it's talking to a CSV file or a comma-separated values file. To begin with, I'm going to go ahead and open up this sequence, and I really want to be able to preview the changes that I'm getting ready to make, so I need to set a preview source or a file to refer to. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and jump to my Downloads folder, and I'm going to go ahead and open up some of these files. So I was sent these files by a customer, and I want to point out that currently it's looking for CSV files, but there are a ton of file types that are actually just CSV files that don't necessarily end in the CSV extension. In this instance, you can see the cut file is literally just a notepad file or a Word file, some kind of text document that is comma separated values. So I'm going to choose this file as my preview source. And you can see whatever I've typed into the formula box or the cell that I'm looking for material, it's going to return whatever that column, if it were in Excel, whatever that value is. So in this instance, you can see my material is chill, my length and width are set, I've got quantity set. But one of the special things that I wanted to show you is I wanted to show you that we can actually parse information out from a single cell that would typically have a lot of pieces of information in. As an example, it would be very common for a CSV file or a cell, an Excel file, within one of those cells or within one of those data points between commas to have multiple pieces of information like left, right, top, and bottom edge banding. And in order to do that, we can write formulas to extract that information. Now, just to show you I'm actually extracting information from a cell that has 4 zeros in it, I'm going to go ahead and say that this substring, I want it to use characters 0 through 4. And you can see I now have 4 zeros because that is the entirety of the cell's contents. I'm going to change this back, obviously, and I just want it referring to the first character in that cell or in that data point between the commas. So that's our import sequence right there. Mapping the data is pretty easy as long as you have a preview file set, and you can see this is all the data that is being encompassed in that file that I used as the preview file. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this, and I want to point out that most often we are going to be combining sequences, and we do that with scripts. So if I run this Renewity CSV sequence, and I just come over here and say, I want to run that sequence, and it says, okay, what files do you want to import, or what file do you want to import? Then I'm going to go ahead and select the one that I used for preview. Now, this is fine because I brought in a bunch of parts. In fact, it should have the amount of parts. You can see right there, I brought in 248 parts that are all the chill material, and it has all the information I need. Perhaps it doesn't have a piece of information, so again, I wanted to say you can take that cell and you can apply it to the entirety of the column that you're working in. But none of these parts have machining on it. Now that may be the case, and it may be sufficient if we're just sending it to a panel saw. But maybe we want to see the actual machining that's going to take place later on a single part processing machine. Maybe we want to just see it to make us feel comfortable, or maybe we're sending it to a 3-axis, 4-axis, or even 5-axis CNC. So in that case, we'd really like to see the machining. And if that is the case, then like I said, we're going to combine the import sequences with a script. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this and remove my Sheets group. I'm going to go ahead and open up a different Sheets group that I had for a different customer. And I'm going to go ahead and run this script. And as you can see, this is a DXF with a CSV overlay. So the CSV is importing all of the data for the parts, and specifically it has a column that refers to the DXF file in the same folder. So I went ahead and ran that, and it is going to prompt me to select a file. Now, these files were created for a different customer, so I'm going to jump into the files that I used for this script and overlay specifically. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here, and you can see I've got a bunch of Excel files, and then even within here, I have all of the DXF files. So if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and bring in this file, which actually has all of the parts information, and as I said, the DXF file names. So once I bring that in, it is now going to import all of the part information that is actually embedded within that file. And it should have all of these things, but the customer has left them blank in their design software. So we just need to start filling that out. It has the material information for it, and then it actually has all of the machining information for the specific parts that have machining. And if I remember right, most of the ones are these, the ones that are mellowing. So those are some drills for a specific type of fastener, usually an RTA fastener. But we now have the ability to see the machining like we wanted to. Go over a couple features of BlueCell that might be something that you're expecting to see from just about any software nowadays. So to begin with, in all of the grids, you can choose which columns you'd like to display. And we also have 20 user text field columns, so those can be customized to whatever you need. You can always bring these things up and group by a specific material, name, assembly name, number, all kinds of stuff. You can always say, I want to ungroup it. And then I want to jump into some of our advanced settings. So if I click on this advanced settings tab, you can see I have access to two different tabs, one called saw patterns and one called CNC patterns. The majority of all of these settings are basically just user interface. In the optimization tab that I want to go over, the first is maximum unique sheets. Now, if I set this to 0, that means that there's going to be no limit to the variance of sheet sizes that are available for BlueCell to choose from. If I do set it to 1, that means that throughout the project, throughout the optimization actually, it's going to only choose the sheet size with the highest yield. So if a 4x8 gets 99%, but a 5x12 gets 99.5, it would choose the 5x12 and then restrict all future sheets to be 5x12. I'm going to go ahead and leave it to 0 because I want to go for the highest yield possible. The next unique feature that I think is really fun is the pattern sorting. So if I click down here, and let's say that I want my operator to have the ease of having all his material types together, and then I want the highest yield parts to go first and descend into the lowest yield sheets, so that way he has to stop less for scraps or remnants or just throwing trash away. I don't want him to get interrupted. So I can set that as well. I want you to know that whatever changes that I made in this job right here are now changes that are saved to the system. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK to get out of advanced settings and jump back to review. We've got the parts groups, the sheets, and then we don't have any optimizations done yet, but I'm going to fix that in just a second. We click the optimization button and it should start going through the different types of materials that we're going to use. I'm going to put this on pause so I have enough time to come back and show you one more really unique feature that I think you'll like. Just going through and creating optimizations, we do have the ability to run or review a summary for the overall optimization. So you can see that I have 11 patterns which used 11 sheets because this went to a nested based CNC. I had 101 parts. This is how much surface I used, and I had an 81.6% overall yield. The little feature I was telling you about that I wanted to demonstrate real quick was the grain formations. So if I had parts that were what we would call perfect graining, and I wanted to keep those together, I could do things like this, and obviously this is a bad example, but I can lock these in and kind of play with them so that it locks in that formation, and BlueCell will not move those. To finish up, next video I record is going to be reviewing post processors, but that is all the time I have left. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.